So today I have my special guest, RJ. RJ, welcome to the podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. My name is RJ Romano, and I work for BDO Consulting. I lead BDO's supply chain advisory practice, and I'm excited to be here.
Okay, fantastic. And BDO came out recently with your 2023 Manufacturing CFO Outlook Survey. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about that? Give me some highlights and some things that you come across that you found interesting?
The survey did just come out. We polled 125 different CFOs in the manufacturing sector, ranging from 250 million in revenue to over 3 billion in revenue. And we've done this survey for a couple years now, but I think the focus of this survey was really trying to understand a few different things. One, regarding the continuation of supply chain disruption and what the future may hold there. We also looked and had questions about merger and acquisitions, investment in technology, and other various topics that are specific to various manufacturing industries like automotive and retail, etc. So very informative, but yeah, there was a lot of different surprises in there that I'm sure we can get into.
Okay, and let's do it. So what were the surprises that you found? What were the things that jumped out at you as being most interesting?
Yeah, I think the outlook from manufacturers overall, 70% of them said that they are looking forward to a very profitable 2023. And so I think the other interesting part over the past couple of years, supply chain has been a big topic. That didn't change as far as the participants saying 70% of them expect that there will be some supply chain risk to their business, but how they go about addressing those supply chain disruptions was interesting. Typically, over the past couple of years, it has been around cost reduction and focused around identifying where there's some risks in supply chain. But at least in this survey, there was a lot of talk about investment in technology and visibility of a company's global supply chains as being very critical for them to make various decisions. And then I think the other interesting one was around the nearshoring, onshoring. We really wanted to try to gauge how many companies on the U.S. side and globally that are looking to move production, move manufacturing to different parts of the world. And that was pretty interesting to see the results there.
Okay, the whole nearshoring one has been talked about for several years now, and we've not seen a huge amount of movement. Is that going to change, or is that still just something that people talk about?
Yeah, I'm with you. We thought at the peak of COVID there would be this mass exodus from China. What we have been seeing over the past couple of years with our clients is designing different strategies around how they would deploy that strategy of nearshoring or onshoring. And we're starting to see companies actually push the execute button. And I think 2023 will be a lot of activity on that front. We've worked with a lot of clients that are deciding, should I actually start a new plant in a different part of the country? Should I move production out of Asia? Should I just move one production line or a specific product to a different part of the country? Those hybrid strategies is what we've been seeing a lot of, and I think it's only going to expand. The other interesting part of the survey was around mergers and acquisitions. We are seeing a spike in that, and I think that's also part of this strategy where instead of building a new manufacturing plant somewhere else, they are looking to acquire companies that already have a presence, they already have the labor, they maybe already have the equipment and the tooling to go ahead and manufacture something that they deem is critical and go down this path of maybe a little bit more vertical integration. But all of those things are starting to bubble up and starting to rise to the top a little bit. And we believe 2023 is going to be a lot of activity in that area.
Interesting. What kind of impact will that have on global supply chains?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to figure out a little bit here. But we do know that everyone is keeping a close eye on the different strategies out there. Some we know already, a lot of companies are looking at manufacturing in other countries in Asia, like Malaysia or Vietnam. But the expansion and the increase of manufacturing in Europe and in North America, South America, taking a decent amount of manufacturing, especially on the chip side, from Asia. I think that everyone is trying to figure out where people will land. But one thing is for sure, Asia is looking at opportunities for them to expand their companies and their manufacturing presence outside of China. So Chinese companies are looking to expand their operations and manufacturing footprint in other countries as well. So this is the new norm, a global supply chain that has a lot of arms and legs all over the world. And it should be interesting for years to come.
Yeah, it is interesting because after World War II, let's say, you saw there was relations between the US and Japan were a bit frosty. And one way Japan overcame this was to start building manufacturing facilities in the US. You saw lots of big Toyota plants, for example. China can't exactly do the same thing, can they? Because you're seeing some pushback in some states when Chinese factories say that they're going to start building there.
Yeah, China has made a huge investment, and there's a reason why they're deemed the factory of the world. And I think what we are seeing is the large campuses and the investment that they've made in the manufacturing space. It's going to take a while for us to see that change anytime soon, but companies are recognizing that there's an opportunity from a supply chain risk and resiliency point of view to not have all their eggs in one basket. And whether that means a full-blown manufacturing campus or operation somewhere else outside of China, maybe not so much, but opportunities for certain materials, certain components, certain production lines that could be moved elsewhere is more practical, more efficient, and you just have to be very specific in what type of hybrid strategy or nearshoring or onshoring strategy that you want to have. But the expectation that these large manufacturing plants and campuses in China are going to be picked up and moved somewhere else, that won't happen. The technology and the automation they have is still very superior to a lot of countries, and that's going to be a key for them to continue with high volumes of production. But there's definitely going to be some shifts across the globe.
Okay, and for companies that can't get their facilities outside of China, is it just then a case of, as you said, doing a merger with some other company or standing up a plant in somewhere nearby?
Yeah, I think if anything, nowadays there's more eyes on the supply chain, and more companies, more CFOs are getting involved with the operations and are understanding the level of investment that needs to happen for a supply chain to be efficient, to be resilient to other disruptions. And that should allow for companies who maybe are stuck as far as having manufacturing in China to at least decide and be a little bit specific or choosy about who they want to partner with, and making more of a partnership approach to those different suppliers, maybe investing in that company for increased automation or a new production line. So a lot of companies are going down that path where they are trying to build a more partnership-friendly approach with different suppliers and manufacturers in China. We've seen a lot of that from a supplier contract manufacturing point of view during COVID when some suppliers outperformed others. Everyone is kind of on notice. And I think for those companies, they should just really focus on finding the right provider for them and investing in that partnership approach.
Okay. And for companies that do have a presence in China, what kind of barriers are in place, or what kind of they're obviously finding difficulties in extricating themselves, or at least standing up new facilities elsewhere. Apart from just the cost, what other kind of barriers are in place for organizations?
I would say the barrier or the gap is still around visibility and transparency. The companies that have great success working in China or through China, it's because everyone is transparent. There's visibility, there's data that is flowing back and forth real time in some instances that allows people to make proactive decisions and decisions that make sense for both parties involved. And it just allows for a more efficient and value-added partnership moving forward. So I think for companies that I wouldn't call it a gap, it would just be a focus around making sure that the visibility and the technology is there so that from a data point of view and a visibility point of view, your partners or customers have that comfort level that they can understand what is going on over there and they can make decisions as they need to. And you have also the opportunity to be transparent with them. And that partnership, I think, is where it'll really grow and foster into a solid relationship, and you will be a premier customer in that situation.
Okay. And there are regulatory issues to consider as well, aren't there? There's now rules in place about companies having manufacturing facilities in China versus in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, there are. I think the biggest hurdle right now or regulation that is will have an impact globally is around this forced labor initiative. Different governments, different regulations are coming out right now around identifying supply chains that potentially have manufacturing using forced labor. That is starting to rise as a major concern and potentially might be the new big supply chain disruption out there if governments start penalizing companies or holding freight at borders because they've identified that something or a component or a piece of a product came from a manufacturing location that possibly has forced labor. So this one is very interesting. Again, it goes back to trying to understand and map out your entire supply chain and understanding who are your suppliers to your suppliers and making sure that there's no risk to your supply chain that all of a sudden a shipment may be stopped because you thought you were getting it from a provider that was not using forced labor, but you find out that 2 suppliers lower they are, and you had no idea. So it is a little bit scary. I know that especially on the US and in Europe, there's various regulations that they are imposing right now around forced labor. And I think 2023, if you're not looking into that, I think that's probably something that should rise to the top as far as a priority for you, just to make sure you're checking all the boxes and making sure that obviously your freight doesn't get held up somewhere and it causes a major issue for your company.
Yeah, because the German legislation, whose name I can never remember because it's 4 or 5 words long and it's Germanic, that legislation came into effect, if I remember correctly, at the start of this year. Now, I think implementation is going to take a while, but still it's now on the books as the law in Germany, and it will spread throughout the other jurisdictions in the EU, and I assume similarly in the US as well. So that is going to have big implications for all supply chains, right?
Yes, absolutely. And we're starting to, for example, in the US, there's various different certifications that you can obtain that allows you to have faster movements across borders and imports and exports. And even something like that, you spend 2 years getting a special certification, and all of a sudden now there's forced labor language in there that you have to abide by, and you could lose your status. That could be a big impact to a lot of companies. And like you said, it seems to be different countries are considering or posting these types of regulations. We're not sure exactly when a lot of these regulations are going to start being enforced, but you don't want to be caught with your hand in the cookie jar here soon if those mandates and penalties start to come down on companies. So I would definitely try to do your diligence now and try to understand what regulations are either coming in your country or impact your part of your global supply chain, and start trying to understand where there might be some risk for you.
Yeah, and this means that organizations are going to have a level of visibility into their supply chains, which they've had difficulty achieving up until now. How do they do that?
Yeah, and this one is tricky. Everyone has to get involved. Again, I mentioned the supplier to the supplier to the supplier. Going that level of granularity takes time. It takes a lot of information, and it is harder if you're not even sure from a data perspective or from a visibility perspective. Do you have an understanding of all the different suppliers that are in your network, and where those materials are coming from? You may know where their corporate office is, but do you know where their manufacturing location is? Those are the types of details that a lot of companies haven't really dived into yet. A lot of companies from a supply chain technology point of view are looking at investing things like supply and demand data and trying to understand transportation costs, but getting to this granularity of all the different suppliers in your network takes a little bit of a deeper dive and more investment of time and technology to be able to get there. And so it is an opportunity for companies to continue down this supply chain journey of understanding more about their supply chain. Being a supply chain guy for over 25 years, it is good to see it's in the forefront and that companies are focused on it. But besides just being aware of supply chain, you really need to understand all of the different functional areas and the inputs and the outputs to really get a handle on your entire supply chain. And this only just increases that focus for hopefully a lot of companies.
Okay, is this going to, do you think, have an economic impact on China? Because if we're seeing manufacturers pull out of the country and we've seen their GDP not grow as much as it could have done because of the COVID zero, which now they've rolled back on, but still, is this going to affect their growth?
I think so. I think this is a major issue that I know on the US side is front and center for a lot of companies. We have worked with clients that had no idea that, they were getting certain materials from China. They were getting an assembled product that they thought was coming from a different country, and unbeknownst to them, a lot of that material came from a region in China that is well known for forced labor. So it is a little scary, but I think for China specifically, yes, I think just the fear alone of potentially having a lot of product stopped or held at various borders around the world, just at the potential risk that something might be coming from a country that has, or a province that has forced labor, that should be alone enough for companies to figure out what is my plan B and what's my plan C, and should we pull the plug on what we do in China. So it's it is a major concern, and I know it is a driving factor for some of the decisions that have been made by some of our clients on whether they should consider nearshoring or onshoring or moving their manufacturing. So that has definitely been a top driver in those decisions, and I think it'll continue especially once regulations start and penalties start to hit different companies, and companies start recognizing that, yeah, this is serious.
Mm. And where to from here? I mean, what's the next 3, 4, 5 years look like for China and for global supply chains as a consequence of all this?
Yeah, I think I'm excited about the opportunity for investment in different countries and the ability for supply chains to really be regionalized or truly be global supply chains. It will require a lot of investment into supply chain professionals and understanding all of the different variables and nodes of how their supply chain works, especially if you're going to start kind of decentralize it and put different parts of your supply chain in different parts of the world. I think that concept is definitely front and center. And for China specifically, we do expect that grip of the factory of the world to loosen quite a bit over the next several years. And I know U.S. manufacturing alone has really pushed the chips manufacturing here in the United States with a bunch of incentives. And I know across the world they're doing something similar in different countries. So I think for that concept, that will be kind of the new supply chain. It won't be anymore where everything is driven off of the lowest cost supply chain and leveraging China for that. It's going to be more of a shift of how resilient or bulletproof your supply chain is moving forward for potentially the next disruption. Do you have redundancy in your supply chain so that if a tsunami comes and it knocks down your one manufacturing plant, do you have another plant ready to go and has the bandwidth to supplement that for a period of time? Those types of what if scenarios is really driving a lot of decisions on what these supply chains will look like 2, 3, 4 years from now. So it is very interesting, but there's going to be a lot of changes in a normal supply chain that is really driven typically off of cost. So it will be interesting to see how people decide what their supply chain should look like and be optimized for the future.
Yeah. Yep. We're coming towards the end of the podcast now, RJ. Is there any question that I haven't asked that you wish I had, or any aspect of this that we haven't touched on that you think it's important for people to be aware of?
I think the only other thing that I have been recognizing from a supply chain point of view, and this survey highlights it, is the CFO's involvement with supply chain nowadays. When I worked in industry, going to a CFO about a supply chain issue was very tough, and especially if I was asking for money or investment into the supply chain, CFOs really had no idea from an operations point of view, and I think it bodes well for supply chains nowadays that CFOs are getting involved. They're trying to understand the challenges with the supply chain, and it's not just all the problems rolling down to the supply chain operations team and having to figure it out. It seems to be there is a collaborative effort in the C-suite office nowadays around supply chain, and so I'm excited to see that. And clearly from our CFO survey, CFOs are very knowledgeable of their supply chains, and I hope that continues. So, but that's probably the only other thing, but just wanted to call that out.
Super. RJ, that's been really interesting. If people would like to know more about yourself or about the report or any of the things we talked about in the podcast today, where would you have me direct them?
Yeah, you can go to BDO.com and you can find information about our supply chain practice there, or you can reach me on LinkedIn, and I'm available as well there.
Superb. Great. RJ, that's been really interesting. Thanks a million for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you very much, Tom.